So I was back home in Arkansas last week. Long story, but I went out to visit my grandparents as I always do when I go back to visit Arkansas. There was that one time I didn't, and then they caught me at Walmart, and that was awkward. So now every time I go back, I visit them. And back in the 90s, in good 90s style, Legends Look Back style, we had quite the Beanie Babies collection. And I mean, like, hardcore Beanie Babies collection. My mom, my grandma, my Aunt Laura, and I had this conspiracy, like this cohort of Beanie Baby collecting. And like we were going to Freddie. You remember when McDonald's would give away Beanie Babies?
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
So it was such a thing that like we coordinated. This was like pre-text messaging. We had to make real phone calls in order to coordinate this stuff on like the real phones with the wire, that you had to stand next to the wall while you actually talked on it. And we're like, all right, we're going to get the Shamrock bear. You get the little purple bear. And then you get the platypus. And then try to get extras and then we'll trade. So I went to visit my grandma. Turns out she saved them all. What, 25 years later, still has all of these freaking things. And she was like, next time you come, bring your kids and they can play with my Beanie Babies. And I was like, never change, Grandma, never change. Also, this is going on my podcast. And she was like, on your what? Emma, are you too young for Beanie Babies? You know about Beanie Babies?
I do know about Beanie Babies because of my grandmother.
Yes,
She had a
to the
Beanie
whip.
Baby thing too. Yeah, she had like a big like wicker basket of them, and
Ooh.
yeah, no, I totally remember those. She was obsessed with them.
Well, I mean, the joke goes, Freddie. Nice hat, by the way, man. That's the coolest hat in the galaxy. Oh my
Yeah, man, I
gosh.
love it.
That really works with our Legends Look Back vibe. I was like, we thought those were going to be so valuable and what a bust, right? And she was like, I'm pretty sure they've come back around. Grandma was like spitting her alternative facts at me that some of these Beanie Babies have become valuable. Do you know about this, Freddie?
I mean, I feel like right now is the collector season for the 90s, especially. I've been seeing a lot of look at this hat. This is from
That is awesome.
Disneyland, brand new. This is the thing that's going on right now. So,
That is cool.
we're just riding high on that 90s collectors pop culture thing right now.
Okay. So it's possible. I'm gonna have to do some
Yeah.
some good eBay searching. Use those Utini affiliate links on my '90s Beanie Babies. You know, I did not save all of mine. Hate to break it to my grandma. Don't know where they are. Like they could be. I'm guessing they're in like a vacuum sealed storage bag in a storage unit in Arkansas that I don't have the keys to. You know what I'm saying? Like that's probably where all of mine are. But I will say this much. Uh, it's gonna be pretty exciting when I like lay all these out on the floor. I'll bring my kids and like tell the story of which ones we had to go through the drive-through for like multiple times. My grandma was like, "I ate a lot of Happy Meals for you, boy," and it's like, "Thanks, Grandma. I just really appreciate it. I'm so glad you saved all your Beanie Babies. It's gonna make such great material on the podcast." Well, we do talk about Beanie Babies here on Legends Look Back. We also talk about other vintage things from the late 90s, early 2000s, such as tonight's book about everybody's favorite purple saber-wielding Jedi. So, citizens, without further ado, let's start the show. Welcome, everybody, to Legends Look Back, proudly part of the Uchini Podcast Network, a Star Wars books podcast for people who are white, black, brown, or blue, dabba dee dabba die, where we talk about all things Legends, celebrating our rich EU history, as well as diving into the lesser known Star Wars classics. I'm your host, Jared Mays, and I am joined by wearing the very best hat in the galaxy, my good friend, Freddie C. How are you, Freddie?
I'm doing fantastic after that opening. That was one of the best things I have heard in a long time. I have to give it to you. I don't know how you came up with that. That was great.
Honestly, I forgot that I put that in the show notes until I started talking. And then I was like, oh, we're talking about Beanie Babies. Here we go. You know who also did pretty well in that segment on Beanie Babies is our producer filling in for us this month. Emma, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. I was a little thrown by the Beanie Babies talk. Also surprised that I was able to participate in that given my age. But again, like, grandmas have a thing for Beanie Babies, and we love them for that.
Yeah, here's the things we talk about on Legends Look Back. Ready? Grandmas, rad 90s hats, Beanie Babies, Pokemon, and that's it. No, and also Star Wars. Also Star Wars. In fact, I'm really excited for tonight's discussion on a book that I've slept on, a book that I like read and enjoyed, but for me it was kind of B tier. Gotta say, we're gonna have a discussion tonight about this one. That is, of course, Matthew Stover's, I would say, the one and only Mace Windu centric novel. There's others that have him in there, but I mean, man, this one is a Mace Windu book. And it was amazing. We had so much fun behind the scenes chat, both in the Legends Look Back Discord channel, as well as in the behind the scenes in Slack, talking about how much we have enjoyed this book. I'm so excited for us to talk about it. But before we do, Freddy has something exciting that he wants to show off. In fact, I was like, Freddy, just save it for next week, or 2 weeks from now. We're just trying to get right into the juicy content with our book roundtables now. Let's save some of the, peripheral kind of segments. And then he was like, actually, John Jackson Miller threw in something special. I was like, yeah, that's going on the show. That's going tonight. Yeah, for sure. We got to hear about this. Tell us what you got, Freddy.
So I have yet to open it. It's sitting right here. First, let me bring it out. It's about about roughly 10 pounds. It's a heavy book.
A heavy Beanie Baby, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So John Jackson Miller released a while ago that he was going to be signing a few sets of the Old Republic collection. And here we go. Here's the one that I got. I don't know if you can see that.
Good thing you've been working
So
out, Freddy.
beautiful.
It looks heavy.
It's a beautiful
textbook.
cover. It is like a textbook. And he asked me, he's like, what do you want in the book? And I was like, you know what? Surprise me. And he's like, Legends Look Back, right? And I was like,
I'm glad he remembered us. That's exciting.
That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I've asked him a few times because I was curious. Yeah, he said, if you haven't read Star Trek book, read this one. And I asked him about it, so I think he might have just remembered because it wasn't too long ago. So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm opening the book. I don't know if you can read it. First of all, there it is.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Look at that gold.
Check this out. So it says, Legends Look Back is so wizard.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
Freddy, that's
May the force be
amazing.
with you, John Jackson Miller.
Oh my
No
gosh.
way.
I just felt my face change like 6 shades of color as I saw that. Man, that just makes my night. That's so cool.
Oh,
So
that's
there you go.
amazing.
I'm like legitimately crying, man. That's so cool. That's so awesome.
So yeah, and I don't know if you guys saw it. I posted it earlier. The actual slip that he put on the package with my name and his address, etc. It said Master Freddy C.
I saw that.
And,
Oh my god.
yeah. So I'm just stunned by this whole thing.
He's
this is the
such a
first
cool
time I
dude.
opened it. So
Such a
Live
cool
on the
dude.
stream. That's a good way to a good use for our live stream, Freddy. We just do live openings. All right. If we're doing showing off. Now, mine's not here yet. But what did come in the mail? Well, I was out of town. I was away. My wife was still at home. She just kept texting me like, "You got a lot of packages coming in," and I was like, "Listen, I didn't order anything. I swear. I think it was pre-orders from months ago." Well, it was, and they're really satisfying. I got 3 out of the 4 of the 50th anniversary Legends Black Series.
Oh, nice.
And they come in these really cool packages that look like the books. We've here got the this is Drew Struzan art, I believe, of Maul. It could be Dursuma, I could be wrong. Really cool side packaging too. But then it opens. You get this. Here's some Velcro ASMR for all y'all out there, all y'all weirdos. There it is. Yep. So I mean, it's so cool. It's almost like its own Legends book. The packaging itself. I'm not an in-package collector, but these are really cool collectible pieces. I've got the Legends Maul from the early Dark Horse series. We got Jackson.
so cool.
Jackson.
I snagged that one. I had to.
Not Rabbit, right?
Yeah.
So you got this one, Emma. That's cool.
Yeah, he's so buff, like in person.
Yeah, it's really like unsettling if you just look at it, kind of stare at just how
Yeah.
big those muscles are. Yeah,
And he's like
Don't look too
staring
hard.
at you in the middle of the night, just a little creepy, you know?
Really satisfying to get this in after we just did our Valence character spotlight, and Jackson comes up in some of those stories. And then thirdly, now this one I want to have a little discussion about, Freddy. I read this book, Crimson Empire, after pre-ordering this. I was like, I'm not going to have a collectible that I've never, actually read about. So I read all of the Crimson Empire omnibus. This is a misprint. You know
No
about this, Freddie?
way.
Did you hear this controversy?
Oh yes, I did. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the name isn't correct, right?
Yeah, not to be one of those guys, but hey, this says Carnor Jax, who is the villain in that series, not the hero. It's right there on the front too. Yeah, there it is. Carnor Jax. So it's
There it
got the
is.
wrong name. This is actually Kier Canos, but then it's
Yeah.
got a bio here about Carnor Jax, who would be a great action figure. I would love him, but he's got like he's got a redder helmet. Um, Here we got Carnor Jax with his like scythe blade, which is his characteristic weapon as well. Anyway, I'd like to think this will be more collectible because it's a misprint. What do you think, Freddie?
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember we talked about that when it first dropped,
Yeah.
and we were I mean, I didn't even think twice about it because I hadn't read it in so long. But then after thinking about it, you're right. It's a complete misprint, though. It's the wrong person.
It's one of those things where we said it on the show, kind of thinking they'll get that fixed before they print the actual figure. No, now it's too late. It already hit the production, but maybe this means we'll get more because they're gonna have to write that wrong. They're not just gonna want to print one figure. Surely they'll print a whole new wave, right? Surely. The only one that I'm missing that has not come in yet is Buff Luke, right? Sleeveless
Okay.
Luke
Yeah.
with
yeah.
the blue lightsaber.
I got
from...
that one in. Yeah.
You got it.
He's even buffer in person.
Buffer than Jackson. Who would win an arm wrestling contest? The heir to the Empire, Luke, or Jackson?
I mean, I want to say Luke because he's got the Force on his side, but Jackson is just so buff. I don't know if Luke can beat him.
His ship is called the Rabbit's Foot, so he's lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Buff Leia from the Power of the Force would just beat them all.
Yeah, she is awesome. I do love her. I don't have her, but one day I will. Definitely one of those that I look for every time I go into a comic book store. We'll have to hit up the one in Maine again, Emma, to look for that one.
Absolutely.
Monkey Leia. That's what she's affectionately called. Freddie didn't want to call the princess that, but I'll say it. I said it right here on the show. You know what I'm going to say right here on the show? The fact that we are talking about maybe the least liked Jedi in all of Star Wars. You think that's true, Freddie? As we get to talking about Shatterpoint and the titular Mace Windu book, the only Mace Windu novel. I'm going to go ahead on a limb and say it. I think so. The only Mace Windu-centric novel. I want to ask, first and foremost, before we get into the episode, before you do the summary and get into spoiler-heavy territory, what was your opinion on Mace Windu prior to reading Shatterpoint? It's become popular to hate Mace Windu, has it not?
Yeah. No, yeah, it has. And I get it because in the Clone Wars, and I'm talking about the cartoon and the movies, he just comes off as a little arrogant, a little high and mighty, et cetera, like the typical things that are wrong with Jedi, right? I feel like
he epitomizes the arrogance of the Jedi.
Exactly. So part of me thinks that my opinion is a little skewed because my version of Mace Windu is the version in Battlefronts, and
interesting.
And the Clone Wars cartoon from Gendy. So that's who I see, and I feel like he's a different, more intense, powerful guy. He just I don't even know what the word is. He just exudes intensity.
He punches
exudes intensity. That's a perfect description. I actually think that's probably true for a lot of Legends fans. At least for me, that is my Mace Windu too. Specifically, the Tartakovsky Mace Windu is who I think of first and foremost. I mean, when you got those lightning fast Charles punches, I mean, what else can you?
Charles punches.
Yeah, that's what I picture every time I think about Mace Windu. However, especially this most recent season of Clone Wars, where he is just like super shut down on Ahsoka. Wants no part of it. He's like, "You ain't no Jedi anymore." It's pretty.
Citizen.
Is that in season 7, Emma?
Yeah. Yep. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you're not privy to our Jedi battle plans anymore.
Right.
Somebody who definitely prioritizes the letter of the law over the spirit of the law. More interested in following the rules than he is in extending grace to people. Mm-hmm. I get it. This book, however, is a kind of an alternative take on Mace. Think about how. Let me get Emma's opinion first before we try to make a Mace Windu apology here. Emma, you're admittedly more of a Filoni Clone Wars fan than either Freddy or I are. What's your opinion on Mace Windu prior to reading Shatterpoint?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see in my mind the Mace Windu from Filoni Clone Wars because that's just what I grew up with. And because of that, I always thought that he was like a jerk and not really like that heroic type. I mean, he was a little heroic, I suppose. But I always thought that he was a little bit stuck up and definitely not my favorite Jedi, not even close to it. So it was very interesting. Like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, if I wasn't on this show, I would never have read this book. I would have never picked it up. But you know what? I got to say, I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear it. And, I think part of why this book is so good is it doesn't have all that baggage. That Clone Wars show had not been made yet, neither Filoni's nor Tartakovsky's. Basically, all that we had, this first came out in 2003. All that we had with Mace was, of course, The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. This is even prior Revenge of the Sith, where he takes on Palpatine and puts the blade to his throat. And he's like, he's too dangerous to be kept alive. It's before all of that, right? Before he goes flying out the window to his utter demise or apparent demise. We'll have to talk about if we think he's still alive. We'll get there. The fact of the matter is, at this point, all we basically have are those two movies. And so this is certainly Stover taking and kind of pioneering what he thinks about the character. And so I think that in some ways, this book doesn't have all that baggage and is the better for it, at least with Mace Windu's character. And you think about what we have in those two appearances, if you were to characterize Mace, I think I might call him skeptical, introspective, thoughtful, stern, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like Yoda's straight man, right? Obviously, Yoda's not a barrel of laughs in the prequels like he is in Empire Strikes Back. But, the fact of the matter is he is buddies with Yoda. And I liked it in the audiobook, especially as Sullivan Jones would try to do a Yoda impression through Mace Windu. So it was like Mace Windu's Yoda impression. Those were like some real standout moments for sure. But the fact of the matter is we're talking about this book because it was just recently re-released on June 15th. I think we've even got a cover to show off here. Released on June 15th as part of the first wave of the Essential Legends collection. The book was first released in 2003, as we said, from author Matthew Stover. The main cover, and we're going to compare and contrast these, the main cover was by Stephen D. Anderson. This new cover is by Jeff Manning. Freddie, do you have a preference on either of these two covers? You're our cover art expert on the team.
Yeah, and this is where I kind of fell off on a lot of Legends books, was during this era. The art wasn't, I don't know, it was just too busy in some places. I mean, even Outbound Flight just had a different art style than some of the classic Star Wars books, right? You've got the three heads, possibly, and then maybe some ships and some other scenes.
Yeah,
going
Drew
on.
Struzan did most of the '90s stuff, and obviously it's hard to top that.
Yeah, and there's no way. And this new era of art that came in during this time frame. So like Outbound Flight's cover, this cover, they were just a little different, and for some reason they didn't attract my attention. But then this new one came out, and this one dropped, right? We're going to show in a sec here. That right there is beautiful. I mean, just the intensity in his face, his beautiful purple lightsaber. I dig it, man. There's something about this cover. I feel like if this is the one that came out in that time, I would have actually read it.
Now, here's the thing. He has an intense face and a purple lightsaber on the cover of the original, the Anderson cover. I have heard the Anderson cover described by some friends of mine as one of their least favorite Legends covers, and I don't totally know why. Maybe it's just because Depa Billaba has this dead stare in the background.
You know what it is? It just looks way too busy. There's almost way too much going on, and so your eyes are focused in so many different places instead of where it should be, which is Mace Windu. That's maybe why I love the other cover. The simplicity of it, the intensity of it. You see it. It's your eyes are focused on one thing instead of, who at a brief glance you don't really know what's going on. You're like, is that eyes? Is that a leaf? What is that thing?
Yeah.
You know what I think might make this original cover better is if the Star Wars logo wasn't red, but if it was purple.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that
actually
might
like
make it
the
better.
red and green because it looks like you might get it for Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For Life Day. Yeah, it could be your
Life Day,
Star Wars holiday special gift. I like it because it looks like the jungle. I'll give it that. It's certainly like is this book set in the jungle? I wonder. No, it's like definitely loud and clear with the jungle thing. I will say what I like the most about the new cover, the Anderson, no, yeah, the Manning cover is the subtlety of the Shatterpoint behind him. So
Oh, I didn't notice that until you just said it.
it actually looks really similar to what is depicted in the Clone Wars, Season 1, Episode 21, Liberty on Ryloth. Emma actually just made us privy to the fact that there was a Shatterpoint Easter egg in a Clone Wars episode. So way to go, Emma. I love this image here. It's certainly a subtle throwback, isn't it? You want to tell us about this, Emma?
Yeah, so like in this episode, one of the gunships crash lands, and I guess originally they were going to have Mace Windu cut open the canopy to rescue the pilot with his lightsaber, but instead they had him use the Force to see a Shatterpoint where he could break the glass and get the pilot out instead to pay homage to this book. So I thought that was a really cool throwback, and I haven't seen this episode in a really long time, but if I had watched it recently, I'd be like, oh, it's the Shatterpoint. Wow, there it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. It's pretty cool. There were a couple of little Easter eggs with the Shatterpoint. First and foremost, like we said there in Clone Wars, and now they're less a throwback to the book as much as they are to the concept. Now, obviously, the Shatterpoint idea is carried over into Stover's Revenge of the Sith novelization. There's a lot. He's really drawn heavily on what he set up with lightsaber forms, Mace Windu, all that good stuff in Revenge of the Sith, that novelization. I might actually have to go back and reread it back to back because of how much continuity there is between. But Freddie, tell him about the other plug that the other time that Shatterpoints are mentioned in Star Wars publishing.
So check this out, guys. We're gonna have to try to list out the amount of things. I mean, it's gonna be a pretty intense list, but the amount of things that have made it into canon. Because guess what? Shatterpoint is canon.
Is it really?
It is. It's canon. It was in Aftermath Empire's End, and I believe that's a canon book, right?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
exactly. So in there, Darth Sidious, he mentions, I sense chaos, weakness. I sense a Shatterpoint. So, boom, we got a Shatterpoint right there. And apparently, there's a shuttle that's landing on Sanctuary Moon, and Darth Sidious just senses someone on board that has a Shatterpoint and could have a great role in the course of fate. So I need to go back and take a look at that a little more deeply to see what kind of things we see there. But yeah, there we go. Shatterpoint is canon.
Did you just say you're going to open a canon book, Freddie?
I know, right?
Don't sound so disappointed, my dude.
The only reason I'm disappointed is because I have a backlog to get through for our roundtables.
Yeah. I will say this much. There is one more Legends book with a Shatterpoint connection, if you're looking to stay on the Legends side of things, Freddie. And that is a book that I just recently read this year from the Coruscant Nights series by Michael Reeves. Coruscant Nights 1 actually features the character of Nick Rostu, who is introduced in this book. In fact, in his prologue or epilogue, I don't remember, Reeves thanks Stover for introducing the character and letting him use it. And so in an awkward way, this year I had read about Rostu in Coruscant Nights, which is in the dark times between 3 and 4, and then went back right after that and read about Rostu's introduction in Shatterpoint, which is shortly after episode 2, between episodes 2 and 3. I think I would actually recommend you go in the other order than I did and read Shatterpoint first, which actually makes a lot more sense for the character. But Freddie, that would be a good follow-up if you're looking to get a little bit more Shatterpoint action in your life.
Ooh, yeah, I'm in.
Well, without further ado, we are going to get into it. This is spoiler-heavy territory. And so, before we read the summary, this is your chance to get out, all right? This is definitely one worth picking up. We've got both the new Essential Legends collection. You could go and read the Jungle Christmas cover, the old school 2003 version. Or, of course, you could pick up the audiobook done by Sullivan Jones, which is absolutely incredibly well produced, and I recommend it highly. We'll talk about it a little bit more in just a few minutes. So before we get into it, let's take a little ad break, and we'll be right back with Shatterpoint. little bit more behind the scenes trivia before we read the summary here, of course, from our buddy OK Indar in the chat. That something I left out, in fact, is that Freddie, I was actually surprised to discover this. That the audiobook, even obviously the print book, both the old school paperback and the re-release, has a bonus short story at the end.
Yeah.
I was listening to the audiobook and I was like, how come there's still 14 minutes left in this thing? They're rolling the credits. It's over. I can hear the John Williams music. Freddie, did you know that there was a bonus short story at the end?
I had no idea until I saw that there was an extra number. I was like, wait, why? How? There's no way credits are that long. That's insane. I know. I mean, I know how long the credits are for an audiobook, but there's no way it has its own. It's got 2 tracks. So yeah, I took a listen and it surprised me, and I really liked it.
Yeah, and the book is the short story is called Equipment, which was also written by Matthew Stover, which is cool because it's one of 2 short stories he wrote, in addition to I think his 4 Star Wars novels. And this is, of course, an author who is acclaimed as one of the very best to ever commit his talents to writing in a galaxy far, far away. And so it actually kind of retells the whole story of Shatterpoint from a clone trooper's perspective. Which is super cool and highly recommended. Thank you for plugging that for us there in the chat. So remember, everybody, this is spoiler heavy territory. Now, it is, of course, spoilers for a 25-year-old book. So, proceed at your own risk. We highly recommend you actually read the book, but also hey, it's 25 years old. We shouldn't be spoiling it at this point. So the basic idea is this: Mace Windu is dispatched to rescue his former apprentice, Depa Billaba, who has gone rogue on the jungle world of Harun Kal. This separatist-held jungle planet just so happens to be Mace Windu's homeworld. How about that? What a coincidence. He, of course, is a Corran. No relation to Corran Horn, unfortunately. And his people, the Corranai, are engaged in guerrilla warfare against the Balawai. Are you tracking? There's a lot of technical terms, all right? A lot of world building happening in this book. You got the Corranai on the one side, and then the Balawai on the separatist side. They are, of course, not droids. They are separatist-employed mercenaries. Think of them as like colonial invaders because, of course, the Corranai are the natives, but the jungle world has like this acid, the rain that will destroy droids. So they have to have another way for the separatists to be able to fight on Harun Kal. So rather than the droids, we've got flesh separatists this time around. They are, of course, the Corranai, force-sensitive natives led by the last of the Windus, Mace's long-lost relative, the brutal Kar Vastor, the Lord Pelek, Lor Pelek, which means Lord of the Jungle, and of course the deranged Depa Billaba. They command ack dogs. They ride grassers, which I understood to be elephants. Freddy understood them as cows. I think elephants is cooler, so we're going with that. They, of course, clear the paths through the Corranai, through the jungle for the Corranai. It's a whole thing. There's this ecosystem environment. The Stover really gets into it, and it's like, yeah, they just ride elephants. That's what I got. Upon arrival at Pelek Ba, Mace has a naked confrontation I said naked confrontation. That's right. In the probiotics shower with some of the local militia. He breaks some noses, busts some faces, and then is captured and taken to Colonel Gepton, leader of the local militia, who interrogates Windu, depowers his lightsaber, what a jerk, commissions him to solve his Jedi problem. Well, upon release, Mace is cornered by mercenaries on swoop bikes, trapped in a dead-end alleyway, then rescued by Nick Rostu, a Corranai, and a team that has come to rescue him. But they rescued him from a situation that they had kind of set him up for in the first place, and Mace immediately learns that the good guys aren't really all that good. They take him to Kar Vastor, who does a lot of growling and is super broody about Mace wanting to steal his new Jedi girlfriend or something like that. It's kind of complicated and icky. And Bilaba's not doing so hot, by the way. The brutality of the war and the breakneck environment in the jungle has crippled Depa's connection to the Force and is slowly killing her. Long story short, Mace calls in his flagship to evacuate both him and Depa, who was trying to deceive Windu all along. There's absolute carnage between the Corranai and the Balawai. Nick saves Windu from the killing blow by Kar Vastor. Depa attempts suicide. Then Mace takes control of the droid control system and ends the Civil War, imprisoning both Depa and Vastor, taking them back to Coruscant for questioning with about 100 other plot twists along the way. Man, was this a twisty conniving book. There were so many twists. I was like getting whiplash, and I felt like Depa Balaba by the end of this thing. I was like, somebody just get me out of here. Woo. Oh, so Freddie, let me start with you. Rate Shatterpoint for us. First, tell us your history with the book. Like, how much did your opinion change in this reread?
Yeah, so this is one of those things where I just completely slept on it. I might as well have made it a pillow because I never thought twice to even read it. And I did read a little bit of it. I read about maybe a quarter of it, and I just, for some reason, I just couldn't really get too into it. And I think it was a little slow, right? The action was a little slow. He's trying to figure out what's going on. Obviously, he's getting duped. There's so many plot twists throughout the thing, and I think I just got confused.
It's very exposition heavy in the first like 20, 30, 50 pages.
Yes, yes. And the thing is though, the audiobook, I want to say the audiobook is what really made this thing pretty fantastic for me. And I always have an argument with myself of should I just read the book or should I listen to the audiobook? And in this case, if you haven't read this book, just dive into the audiobook because it'll make your experience so much better. The sounds of the forest, the music when there's battles going on, the intensity, the voice actor is fantastic.
Man, is he amazing?
Everything.
Is he amazing or what?
I want him in more Star Wars audiobooks for real. He's so good.
I actually would like to get him on the show. I would like to interview him on the show and talk to him about what it was like to make this. So we'll make that happen, or we won't.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So Sullivan Jones, fantastic. Let's get him on the show if we can.
So Freddie, do two separate ratings. What's your rating
Okay.
for the book and then for the audiobook?
For the book, I would say it was about like a 6.2. It was, I'm giving it a good rating because I know the content that's in there now. But the audiobook was like a hard, oh man, I would say it's the quality of it's just like an 8.5. The production was fantastic.
You're giving Shatterpoint a 6.2 overall?
Yeah, I don't know. It was hard for me to read. Overall, I mean, I would probably go between the two, right? As the average, maybe like a 7.3.
Okay. How about you, Emma?
Yeah, so I had never, I didn't have any history with this book before reading it for this show. So I don't have anything to go off of besides just what I knew about Mace Windu from the movies and the Clone Wars. Honestly, I agree with you, Freddie. Like, it was very dense at the beginning, very confusing. It kind of reminded me of like a Thrawn book, like with all the hierarchies and things like that. Especially with the new Thrawn Ascendancy books, it very much reminded me of that. I wish that we had a dramatis personae in the beginning, so we could tell the difference between the Koronai and the Balawai, and
that's a good comparison.
All of that. So that was definitely, I think, my biggest barrier in my enjoyment of it was just the complexity of the world that Stover was building. However, I did end up really enjoying it at the end, and I'd say about like 2/3 of the way through, I got really invested in the story, which is always sort of a marker for me if I'm enjoying it, is if I'm really invested in it. So I think I'm gonna give this book overall. And by the way, I read the book along with listening to the audiobook at the same time. That's like my favorite way to read books, but it's like the least cost-effective thing to do.
You just need to do it in like an immersion tank. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. So that's how I read it. The audiobook was amazing. I would give the audiobook an 8. It was amazing. Sullivan Jones did a great job. Sound effects were awesome. And then I would give the book, like the story as a whole, I would give it a 6.5. It really wasn't. It wasn't my favorite. However, it did have some redeeming qualities, which we'll talk about later.
Oh man, y'all killed me. All right. For me, the book is at least an 8. It could be an 8.5 because of how much he committed to his world building, how psychologically mind-bending it was.
Yeah.
There were some points in this book where I was like, I think I need a hug. It was brutal. It was really violent.
Now, Jared,
it's dark.
Try to bump up our scores. Like, by the way, in all the Cosmic Force roundtables, I've been on a Living Force roundtable. Not once have I never increased my score. So you just gotta make your case. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. I think that Stover is operating on a whole new level beyond what most Star Wars authors, especially in Legends, were trying to achieve. He is not just trying to tell a story about shirtless space wizards, right? He is, and I'm not holding up Heir of the Empire as an example. I mean, it's the best Legends book, in my opinion. The point is, he's not just trying to tell a sci-fi adventure. He's making some very deep points about the real world in which we live. There was a lot in this book about race, a lot of subtext about colonialism. There's a lot about the ethics of war.
Genocide.
Yeah, there is a lot happening behind the scenes in this book. And in fact, somebody just recently on Twitter was asking Stover about some of the subtextual meaning, and he actually answered and said, I'm not going to answer that because I don't want to take away your experience and your interpretation, and it wouldn't be fair for me as the author to flex my authorial intent and give you the defining interpretation
That's great.
for how you should read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, the goat. I'd also really like to get him on the show and just have him, please just explain those things to us. But I appreciated the fact that this book was not a Star Wars book. It had very little to do with Star Wars.
Yeah.
On the one hand, he's just developing a world that's so complex, and it's just not about it's not primarily about lightsabers and battle droids, right? There's so much more to it than that. I'll give the audiobook a perfect 10. It was just so incredibly spectacularly performed. There's a lot happening with the production, a lot of new music that I was hearing, some musical cues, some sound effects that they've never used before. So I appreciate that they're expanding their library in that regard. Sullivan Jones's Mace Windu, his Samuel L. Jackson his impression was just spectacular. And I especially liked his Carvaster voice. It was just chilling, wasn't it? It was terrifying.
Oh, for
It
sure.
was good. It was really good. Yeah. The only thing that took me out of it, I know you're talking about the new music, but there was this one part in the book that took me out of it a little bit, and it reminded me of the music from the Bourne Identity or something. A little too I'm not even sure how to explain it. So there was just that weird little thing. It didn't really feel like Star Wars music or something that we would have heard in a previous thing, but it was new for sure. And I have to admit that was probably the only thing that I see that's negative, and that's really not that bad.
I don't want it to be all John Williams music all the time. I actually like to have a little bit of some other produced music that they're putting in. Some of that proprietary stuff that they keep behind lock and key. So before we get into the character-centric questions, tonight we're going to do a 2-part roundtable tonight, and then again next week. Tonight is all about the character. We're going to talk Mace Windu. We're going to talk Adepa Balaba. We're going to talk about Carvaster. And, of course, everybody's favorite sidekick, Koronai, Nick Rostu. We're going to talk about these primary characters. Tonight, next week, we'll go into some of the overarching questions, such as, what is the Shatterpoint? And before we get there, we're going to take a quick break. And we will be right back with our character-centric discussion in just a second. I appreciate our producer, Emma, for holding us accountable. By the way, hey, can we get a round of applause for Emma? First of all, filling in to produce for us this month. And also, quietly, Freddy, don't you blow out those levels. I got to edit this thing. On the other hand, some great, thoughtful answers. Doing a great job. Emma, in case anybody hasn't told her yet, pretty good at this podcasting thing. But she did hold me accountable here by saying that I did not rate the book. I only rated the audiobook. The book, I said it was at least an 8. I might give it an 8.5. It was just violent. It was just brutal. So there were some times where I was like, somebody give me one of those airplane puke bags. Stat. I did read part of it on an airplane, by the way. All right. So first and foremost, Freddie, I want to ask, this gives us Mace's Legends backstory, which is fun. I totally forgot about that part. I was like, oh yeah, Mace is a Koronai. This is his home planet. Did you buy this as Mace's origin story? I don't know if we even have one in canon.
Yeah, it's interesting because you really get to see who Mace is, where he came from, and how the Jedi deal with meeting up with their people again, right? They're like, nah, sorry, I'm not the same as you. I'm a Jedi. I'm different. I grew up different. We may be the same thing, but we're not the same thing. It's really interesting how he handles it, and the whole time, they were trying to. There was a battle between them saying, "Hey, Mace, you're one of us," and him saying, "No, I'm a Jedi." So
yeah,
it's curious. And then, of course, just seeing the kind of people they are and where they came from and their characteristics, you can kind of see why Mace is what he is and why he believes the things that he believes in. And we also get our first view of the lesson of attachment from Yoda with the I'm not sure if it's like a rattler or something.
Yeah, he took Mace's rattle and it broke it. Yep. And he was like, a rattle you do not need. So he's basically like, learn your lesson. That's right. I was like, brutal, Yoda, brutal. What about you, Emma? You're more into the canon world than Freddy or I. Did you buy this as Mace's origin story?
I did, and I don't know if this is just because of my more canon lens, but I did find it interesting that the Jedi Order let Mace go back to Harun Kal even before this to sort of train in Vapad or honing some sort of a force power, something about him going back to train.
I'm not sure that was ever clear.
Yeah, he definitely went back for something, but I was surprised about that because I would say more in canon, like that sort of attachment is like forbidden and that they try to distance you as much as you can from your past and from your family. And here Mace is like, he knows some of his quote unquote tribe, I guess you could say. And he still interacts with them like a little bit. And I found it very interesting how he still uses some of his experiences from the jungle and some of those like survival techniques in how he sees battles and war as more of like a survival game than an actual battle to win.
That's a good point. Yeah, I liked that it showed that he was the prized gem of his people. Like they believed in him and sent him off to the Jedi as like he came from a force sensitive species, right? His people are all inherently force sensitive. What do they call it in this book? Not the force. Do you remember, Freddie?
Goodness.
Pelikotan.
Pelikotan, yeah.
Good job. Yeah. Can you spell that for us, Emma? Just kidding.
I was going to say, no way.
I listened to so much on the audiobook that writing the show notes for this, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to put some letters together and hope that I know what I mean. Spoiler alert, I spelled it all wrong. I ended up double checking. Every single thing that I could spell wrong, I did. Even Mace Windu. You wouldn't think that's so hard to spell. No, just kidding. What I appreciated was like Mace is one of the best Jedi. I mean, he's got this privileged position on the Jedi Council, seems to be second only to Yoda in the prequels. And the idea that he could come from a planet that is kind of a backwater world, right? In fact, it's so incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for here, Freddie? Like they're natives, they're not civilized. And there's a lot in this book about the nature of civilization. It's really kind of mind-bending.
It is.
To consider.
It's a deep book.
It's
a deep book. We could probably spend hours just tearing apart like the lessons and the philosophy of this book. It's crazy.
Yeah. In this, it's the idea is that Mace comes from this backwater planet, but is clearly being lifted up into the limelight as somebody who has the potential to be one of the best Jedi. And the cool thing there is you go and get to meet some other Windus. Like you go and meet other people who have similar force abilities to Mace, but we're not trained by the Jedi. And so
Mhm.
you get to see just what the flip side of that coin, that kind of twisted reflection in the mirror might look like, as we will get eventually, of course, in both Carvaster and then on the flip side in Nick Rostu as well, who go both very different directions. But before we get there, one of my favorite points about Mace in this book are his one-liners.
He's so good.
Weren't these amazing, Freddie?
Yeah, they're so good. I feel like you could find a one-liner in at least every chapter.
I meant to write more down, and then maybe for next week we'll vote on his best ones. Or maybe I'll give you. All right, here's what I'll do. I'll give you one-liners that are from Mace, and then others that are like from stand-up comedians, and you'll just have to figure out which ones were actually from Mace. We could do like Samuel L. Jackson lines from other movies.
Oh,
Snakes on a plane.
Yes. Somebody get these friggin' droids off of my jungle. Yeah. That wasn't great. All right, edit that out, Freddie. Here's a couple that were in the book, though. You ready for this? Your chances come in two shapes: slim and fat.
I laughed so hard at that one.
I think I was running when I listened to that, and I just stopped, bookmarked it in my phone, wrote it down, told my phone, remind me when I get home to put that in the show notes. It was so great. And the other one, Freddie, that I really liked was, there's one thing you forgot: an ambulance.
So good.
Because first of all, are there even ambulances
I
in
was just
Star
about to
Wars?
say that. Like, how does that make sense? And
Yep.
there's no roads on Haroon Call.
So good.
It worked. No, yeah, it worked. It was great. It was a good one-liner. I imagine
so good.
Stover's editors being like, "Are you sure you want to keep this one?" And then his response, "Yes, I do."
I want them all.
Yeah. What are your chances of me taking this one out of the book? Slim and fat. All right. I do want to ask though, with Stover's Windu, do you think that Stover's version of Mace Windu is closer to the kind of overpowered, superheroic Tartakovsky Windu, or is he just Samuel L. Jackson in Vietnam?
Oh man, it really did feel like Vietnam in this book. It was so dreadful, and I mean the jungle seemed unrelenting. There was it's hard. It's a dark place, and you can see why Deppa fell into the darkness, right? And we'll probably get into a lot of that stuff later, but I would say that Stowe definitely took a bit of I'm always gonna mess this up. You might as well just say it for me.
Yeah, the Cartoon
Tartakovsky.
Network, Clone Wars, sure.
yeah,
And-
Tartakovsky
yeah.
Windu, but it's there's a different flair to it that just seems like he isn't really that. He is powerful, but he isn't powerful enough, and he recognizes that.
Yeah, I actually love the introduction of the book where he says he talks about failure, and you know, when you learn in this book that this is not an infallible Jedi. We are going to go into the darkness with one of the greatest Jedi ever, and we're going to see how he was fallible. And the very first action sequence in the book, he gets his butt kicked.
Yeah.
And so you learn, like, okay, this is going to be the way this book goes. He's going to have some close encounters, and it's not always going to work out well. And honestly, reading the introduction, even my second time through on this book, which this was my reread, I could not remember what happened to Depa Billaba in Legends. I was like, what is going on with her? This is crazy. And even all the way through the book, anytime she showed up, I was like, what is her deal? I could not pinpoint what was going on with her for the life of me. And so through this, I appreciated that Mace was not just kicking everybody's butt, right? All the way through this, he gets beat by Carvaster at one point, soundly. And even in the post-battle analysis with Nick and Deppa, you know, he turns to Deppa and he's like, tell him, did I throw that fight or did I lose legitimately? And Deppa's like, yeah, he legitimately lost. Car relented because they're what do you call them? They were brothers of some sort.
Gauche.
Gauche.
Yeah.
Or Gauche.
Gauche.
Yeah.
Gauchelo, there it is. Yeah,
Gauchelo,
like
yeah.
clan brother, sure. And Mace all the way through the book is like, I'm not your friggin' brother. And so it was just a great dynamic they had. So I actually really thought that this was less of a Star Wars book and more of a Vietnam War book at times. Yeah. And it was almost like you could just make a Mace Windu fighting in Vietnam movie, and you could basically just, as long as you got some elephants to play your grassers, I think you're pretty well set with this for the most part. There's some very Star Warsy things. The whole concept of his the lightsaber in his mind, that was kind of trippy, wasn't it, Freddy?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was interesting.
Uh,
That's
the
very
i-
interesting.
the idea there was that like there's a physical lightsaber, but he had spent so much time designing it that he could control it through the Force from wherever it was in the galaxy because
It was like a connection, like a built-in connection between him and that device. He had Bluetooth.
sure, yeah, always paired 24/7. I love that. I love that. Um, we talked about Maze. I do want to move on to Depa in this book, though. Obviously, in canon, she has had a wild depiction, especially in comparison to what has happened in Legends. She has just recently been featured once again in the Bad Batch. In episode 1? Is that right, Emma?
Yeah, episode 1.
Fill in her, putting you on the spot here, Emma, as our canon expert. What is Depa's canon demise?
Yes. So, it depends. And
Yeah.
it depends. So I'm going to tell you what it is in television and what it is in the comics. So in television, in the Bad Batch, we see they're on the planet Collar, and Depa and Kanan Jarrus, I lost the name for a second, her Padawan at the time, they were doing a mission, and then Order 66 hit. She tried to hold back the clone troopers and told Caleb, his name was Caleb at the time, Caleb Doom, told him to get away while she held the clone troopers back, and she got shot. In the comics, it happened very similarly, except they were at a campfire at night, taking their rest from their mission, and then Order 66 happened. Caleb felt like something was about to happen, and then all of a sudden, Depa was shot, and that wasn't during a battle. So you kind of have two separate renditions, but essentially, Depa died in Order 66, not. She didn't have this encounter with the dark side that we know of.
Yeah, good job. Hey, everybody give him a round of applause.
That was
on the
great.
spot there. That wasn't in the notes. The fact of the matter is, I appreciate that there's ambiguity in both canon and legends with what happens to Depa. It's a little unclear. That's one of the fun things that they've maintained with the character is it's hard to know exactly what happened to her. And even in the canon comic, legend has it. No, I haven't reread it since it first came out in 2015. There is, from what I remember, an Easter egg to Shatterpoint where they say something whenever Depa, whatever happened to her on that planet. There's some kind of an Easter egg referencing very vaguely that something mysterious happened to her along the way. And so we need to dig up that Easter egg so you can throw it. If somebody finds it, put it in the Legends Lookback Discord channel. We'd love to see exactly what that quote is. I know I'm close.
That sounds interesting. I've got to go back and read that.
Sure, yeah. And the idea here is that it's hard to know exactly what happened to her, both after, of course, she is kind of captured and taken to be tried for her crimes on Coruscant. At the end of this, I think that the legend has it, according to mine and Freddy's favorite guide here by Pablo Hidalgo, the
Essential Reader Companion.
It's been a long week, man. Essential Reader's Companion. Pablo says that they left it open-ended so that if George wanted to put her in episode 3, he could. And so that makes sense. Obviously, this being written prior to episode 3. She was on the council in episode 1, but wasn't in episode 2, or is it the other way around?
I feel like... Ooh, that's a good question.
We'll find out for next week. This is why we have 2-part roundtables. Anything we mess up, we can fix next week. Yeah, absolutely. I do want to show this off, though. A really cool full-page art spread.
Oh, that's cool.
The Essential Reader's Companion for what is happening with Nick and I think Mace and maybe, what's his buddy's name? There's like a little crew of them.
Oh, yep. Her name is...
Emma has remembered so many random questions that I've asked in this episode.
I know, it's on the tip of my tongue. Oh my gosh.
The one that Nick loves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had it pulled up earlier. Let me know if you find it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's who is depicted there. She's got all these. Deppa has all these different depictions across both canon and legends. Referencing Canon the Last Padawan. But here's my big question for you, Freddy. The book opens with like a hologram that Deppa leaves behind, calling Mace not to come. But it's one of those things where it's like, "Don't come. I dare you not to come." The darkness has taken me. This is what happens when a Jedi is finally sane. And that's what obviously
Yeah.
Mace needs to go and retrieve her because it looks like she's lost her way, like she's gone rogue. In the missionary world, I took a lot of missionary courses in college. There's this idea that a missionary can go to another country, learn another culture, and then go native is the term. It's probably not PC anymore. I was, 10 years ago. But the idea is that you can just want to try to give up on your home culture, reject who you used to be, and become the people that come to work alongside. But you lose your distinctiveness and just go full tunnel vision, lose sight of who you really are, which seems to be what's happened to Deppa here. What's your interpretation, Freddy? And I like that it's left a little bit open to interpretation. What exactly happened to Deppa in this book?
Yeah, that's a good one. By the way, I think the character's name we were looking for is Chalk.
I was just
There
about
it
to
is.
say that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
figured it out. Yeah.
Because there were two characters whose named rhymed, right? Chalk and what?
Besh and
Sock?
Lesh.
There it is.
Besh
Yeah,
and
Besh.
Lesh, yes, yeah.
Chalk and Sock.
So so what happened to Deppa? You know what I think happened to Deppa when we talk about war and when we study war, right? We always say war is hell. And there's a reason why they say war is hell, because you see heinous things and people are doing heinous things to each other. And I think what happened is there was just too much darkness surrounding her, surrounding this war. And I'm kind of looking towards Palpatine in this. Like, why else? I feel like he must have had a hand in this, or he recognized it. Maybe he's trying to exploit weaknesses and trying to find weaknesses of the Jedi. So he's like, okay, well, let's just see what a Jedi does in war, right? Because clearly they are about peace, but eventually, he's going to put them in a war. So let's see what it looks like. And it just corrupts them and they get lost. And as we saw in I'm forgetting the name of the book with Obi-Wan and uh
Yeah, Wild Space.
Wild Space. Yeah, you see how corrupt and how much it hurts to be surrounded by dark. And I think that's just what happens to her. She just loses her sanity, and then with that, her will to live.
Wow. Yeah. I think that I've got a similar take. And there is a thread, actually, that, to your point, Freddie, early in the book, Mace and Yoda reflect on the fact that the Force has been clouded, right? Around the time of the Phantom Menace, they say, 10 years prior to this, that their ability to touch the Force had been darkened. A dark force had eclipsed the Force. But they're trying to keep that a secret. And at the end of the book, Palpatine, if I remember correctly, Palpatine hears some of that and learns like, oh, y'all have something's wrong with the Force? Tell me a little bit more about that. No big deal, but like, please, I'm kind of excited by that, but like, no big deal. It's cool. And so this book is kind of like a microcosm. Deppa seems to be a microcosm of what is happening to the Jedi at large. And Harun Kal then is a microcosm for the Clone Wars in general, for the worst of the Clone Wars, just how bad it can really get, where the good guys become villainous, the bad guys are not entirely evil, and you've got to do, even the good guys have to do some heinous things along the way. Is that about the point you're trying to make, Freddie?
Yeah, that's definitely it. I mean, it's they're getting put into a situation which they almost don't have a choice, and they have to take some sort of side eventually. And that side is still going to do some heinous things. And as we see in this book, they almost don't. Whether you're captured and you may be children, it doesn't matter actually when you think about it. Children, women, it doesn't matter. They get sent into the jungle to try to survive, right? Jungle justice. Yeah, and it's just hard to see, so you can imagine.
I think that obviously the Force itself, a Jedi's connection to the Force comes from their perception of life around you. And if you're on a planet that is a jungle planet, it's like you are a sensory overload with the Force, right? There's so much life. From they talk about the bugs that are biting them, and it gets to the point where like you don't even swat them anymore. You just deal with the bites and the itchiness, and the itchiness becomes the norm, and you can't sleep. It's so noisy, and there's so many bugs, and there's so many creatures that could kill you and eat you that he's just sleepless and tired. I was listening to part of this while running, and he's talking about how tired he is, and I just like realized I was running slower and slower until I realized like, oh, like no, I'm just running. It's okay, I got this. So if a Jedi's ability to touch the Force comes from their perception of life around them, if that life then is hostile, if even the good guys are committing moral atrocities, then that should weaken or damage or even overstimulate a Jedi's connection to the Force. So that was my assessment of what exactly had happened to Depa. She had taken moral shortcuts in service to what she perceived was the greater good, or felt like maybe the war was hopeless and there was no way to win. And that was also kind of a defeating her for her.
Yeah.
She lost the will to keep fighting.
Don't forget about Vapad.
She also has Vapad, right?
Yeah. Which
the only other Jedi?
Yeah, the only other Jedi, the only other master, I believe, and Vapad is basically delving into the dark side. And just imagine how many times she had to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. Like, in all of Harun Call, like, the wildlife is trying to kill you. The good guys are trying to kill you. The bad guys are trying to kill you. Like, it is no surprise that Depa kind of went crazy in the darkness, and sort of wasn't able to stave it off. I bet like if Mace stayed there for another month, he would be kind of the same too. You know, I think it's just a matter of like the circumstances around you, like what Jared said. You know, if you're going to be surrounded by darkness, at some point it's going to seep into you too.
Yeah, and I do wonder if Mace would. There were times where he was certainly depressed or defeated. There were times where he was feeling the fatigue of the jungle, but he does seem more grounded than Depa, which was one of the big problems in the book. And I did have some dilemmas with like, was this a good depiction for a Jedi Master who was on the council to get so lost to the darkness? Not necessarily the dark side, but definitely the darkness of war and the jungle. It's a little bit ambiguous. So I'm not sure if Mace goes that far. He seems to be more grounded, but you could feel the jungle creeping in, closing in on him.
Right. And I mean, you could argue that like the circumstances that brought him to Harun Call, hearing Depa's voice, and then, you know, sort of saying that he's the one that has to get Depa and that he's the only one, that's kind of dark in and of itself. That's kind of like a Sithly trait. You know, being, you know, ultra connected to this one person, that you hear their voice across the galaxy and that you're the only one that can save them. That reminds me of a certain someone.
Yeah. Max Rebo. I know what you mean.
Okay.
Well, speaking of certain someones, there's one character whose name is dropped a time or two in this book in some really interesting ways, though is not an active character. At least I'm going to spend a minute on this. One of the things that Mace can do with his Shatterpoint power, which is fairly unique to him, is he can detect these fissure lines, the breaking point in a battle or a person or an event. In combat, he can find the one weakness that he can exploit in order to win the battle. But he does say on a galactic scale, Count Dooku is the Shatterpoint of the Clone Wars, a Jedi who believes in trying to break the Republic due to its corruption, a Jedi who has turned to the dark side and mentions that, you know, if they could take out Dooku, they would win the Clone Wars. He is the Shatterpoint, and I don't know that I agree, but there's an unreliable narrator in this because we're getting it from Mace's perspective. Freddy, do you think Dooku is the Shatterpoint of the Clone Wars?
I don't think so. I think he is in a sense, but I feel like he is not the main fissure in the fracture, if that makes any sense at all.
Well, they're fairly ignorant to Palpatine.
Exactly, and I think that's where you know, if and that's the hard part is was Mace able to see a Shatterpoint on Palpatine, but think of it in a different way as, oh, this is the guy who rules the entire galaxy. That's why he's got a Shatterpoint, but not because he's the one with all the machinations going on. That it'd be curious to see how that develops at all. But I think there is some level of superiority, and Dooku does flex a lot of commanding ability of the separatist armies, but I don't know if it's I feel like if he died, Palpatine had a backup of some sort, right? I mean, I feel like he would have figured something out. I don't think he would have been the main Shatterpoint.
Yeah, I mean, Palpatine always has a plan. If we've learned anything from Star
Yeah.
Wars, he always has a backup plan. I mean, maybe, if we're looking at a Shatterpoint, like there's a main Shatterpoint and branches, I could see Dooku having a branch. I could see Grievous having a branch. Maybe even like Wat Tambor. Someone with the
Oh,
bank
come
plan
on.
to
Yeah,
fund it
he
all.
doesn't have, no, he's
Dude.
You don't think? I think if you take the whole banking clan down, they're gonna have some problems. But that's a conversation for another time, I guess. But I think he was correct in seeing Dooku as a Shatterpoint. Was he the Shatterpoint of the Clone Wars? I highly doubt it.
I mean, I think it's Anakin, right? I mean, is
Yeah,
there
he
any
did
way
say
around
that
that?
at the end. Yeah,
He did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he agrees with me. There we go. Yeah, I thought that was really cool that it was not just about individual battles, but we're thinking about even there can be a Shatterpoint on a galactic scale. And I also appreciated that it showed that Mace wasn't always right. He would make these blanket statements like, this is how it is. And I, as the reader, I'm like, oh, he hasn't seen Revenge of the Sith yet. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Well, there's one other character who gets quite a bit of attention in the book. Of course, appears once again in the Coruscant Nights series, and that is Nick Rostu. He comes into the book as a cynical but comical leader of this ragtag group of Koronai who have come in to rescue Mace, retrieve him, bring him back to Kar and Depa. Eventually, in the book, Mace is able to persuade him after saying, like, I got a feeling we're not going to get along. Or I'm not going to like you very much. They do come to like each other. Mace recruits him to become his, a captain
Major.
in the army, a major in the army of the Republic. And they have a little swearing in ceremony and everything. And it's kind of endearing and cute. But it makes you wonder, what if Nick had been rescued by Mace to come along and train as a Jedi? Rather than being so dogmatic about him being too old to become a Jedi. Was Nick Jedi potential? We'll start with you, Emma. Was he Jedi potential, or was he just comic relief?
So there were definitely moments in this book where I really felt like he had a very deep connection to the Force. Maybe something that stemmed from necessity, needing to sort of sense your surroundings in the jungle, needing to use the Force to fight against people trying to kill you. I think he definitely had a strong connection to the Force. I don't know. I feel like he wouldn't take Jedi training very seriously because, like you said, he definitely played a part of like comic relief in the book. I feel like maybe if you take him out of Harun Call and then see how he sort of behaves in an environment that isn't so dangerous all the time, maybe he'd become a good Jedi. But I think how we saw him in the book, I don't think I could say that he would be Jedi material.
Yeah. What about you, Freddie?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think if he was a Jedi, I don't know how many people dislike this word. Personally, I feel like it, Jedi doesn't mean you're dark or light. You can be, should I say the word gray Jedi?
Yes, say it, Freddie. Yes.
I just feel like he is just like I can't remember his name at the moment from Clone Wars. He's a gray
Quinlan Voss.
Quinlan Voss, exactly. Who can kind of maneuver the line a little bit, right? He knows when he's got to do one thing, and he's not going to let it stop him. And obviously, he gets a little too far into it at one point. But I feel like Nick is the same. I don't know if he could. And maybe that's just because of how he grew up, right? And that's why Jedi are taken away from their surrounding environment so that they can be incubated into this lifestyle. But Nick really saw things how they kind of were, right? And he's like, that's just how it is, man. And you heard that a lot from Nick.
Right.
Well, he's a realist.
He's a realist who has used humor to mask his real emotions.
Yeah.
He's used humor to survive in the jungle, and but secretly was like in love with one of his squadron mates, and is devastated in the end when she bites it. Does she bite it, or does she just get wounded?
Yeah, she bit it.
Yeah, F's in the chat for chalk.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But of course, it does have a story continued in Coruscant Nights, Book One. I forget the name, Streets of Shadows or Patterns of the Force. They've got these complicated names. But the first book has Nick Rostu in it, and really continues his arc for what happens when Mace Windu's dead, and like his only friend on Coruscant is gone, and what is he going to do when the war is brought to Coruscant? And so, really appreciate it from that perspective. So, you gotta read that if you want the pseudo sequel to Shatterpoint. Now, let's talk about one last character before we wind down tonight, and that is the kind of the villain. Is he the villain? It's hard to tell exactly. I wonder, does the book need Carvaster? One of the points along this book was that I felt it got a bit complicated. You've already got separatists on the one side, and Getsus, that's a Pokemon guy, isn't
Geston or Getson?
Getson.
Getson.
Gepton. Gepton.
Gepton.
Yes,
Something.
that's it.
One of those names.
Getsus is a villain in Pokemon. My bad.
Wrong franchise.
But I wonder, did the book need Car? There were points where I was like, there's too much going on here. Would it have been better without a big bad Darksider?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I honestly, he kind of made things a little confusing to me because, towards the end of the book, we kind of see Mace working with him a little bit, and then all of a sudden they'll like turn on each other, and then they'll like be a little bit friendly, and then they'll turn on each other, and
Right.
It was very confusing, and then it was like, well, are they related? Are they not? Why does he have a creepy voice? Is it because he is so deep into the dark side that, because they said that if he's not talking directly to you, then you can't hear what he's saying.
Well, I think
I
they
found that
explained
very
that one.
interesting.
I think they explained
Did
that
they?
he had been wounded. The separatists had taken his vocal cords. Is that right, Freddy?
Oh gosh. Must have
Yeah,
missed
was
that.
it they honestly I can't even remember exactly what it said, but I feel like they took away his vocal cords, so he had to use kind of like that force amplification deal.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think he had been interrogated and tortured.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
continue.
okay.
You're making a good point, Emma.
Yeah. I must have missed that part. So, I just found his connection to like Harun Kal, the planet, to be very interesting, and I feel like he was necessary in the book because it sort of gave Mace Windu like a purpose, like a thing to sort of fight back against, I guess, because there's so many people that he could fight against on Harun Kal, like so many enemies, and I feel like it might have given the book a little bit more focus than it would have had otherwise.
I think that he was one of the best villains in all of Legends.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I thought he was so incredibly. If he could scare me every time he came on the page, I was like legitimately quivering. He was so frightening. Part of it was he kept me on my toes. Stover could not make it clear if he was going to join with Windu or was going to try to kill him. And so that ambiguity, I think, is part of what kept me off balance. I think he showed what Mace Windu would look like if he was on the dark side. And so it's like the evil analog if Mace had not been taken from the planet and taken to the Jedi. But on the other hand, I think that the book's meta narrative about civilization and colonialism and genocide and war was the better selling point in the book than just another light side, dark side, a duel in Star Wars. So I thought in some ways it should have just committed all the way to that rather than. But on the other hand, Carr was just an excellent character. What about you, Freddie? You want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I tried to take Carr out of the picture to see how the story reads in that sense. Like, what if it was Master Depa Billaba that was in Carr's position, right? How different would the story be? And I think the fact that Carr was his own character and the fact that he was so powerful, I don't think Master Billaba would have been able to beat Mace. I just don't think she had that power
Oh, so you
to
needed a team up to take him down.
you
Sure.
basically needed not just a team up, but someone who could honestly beat up Mace without anyone's help. Because that makes the whole situation much more difficult, and I feel like that's sort of why they needed some kind of buffer who had the touch of the Force without being a Jedi. So
Yeah, that's a great
interesting.
point. Yeah, Freddy, blowing my mind here. I looked it up. Carr was 14 when he saw his whole family massacred by jungle prospectors,
Yeah.
and he escaped. Doesn't talk about it, but had to survive in the jungle for more than a year. And they make it so clear in the book that without weapons, grassers, act dogs, people, or food to have your back, no supplies, to be abandoned naked in the jungle was a death sentence. And
Hmm.
so it showed just how strong, how powerful he was, but also like it changed him. Like it made him so hardened. And so that's how he received this injury as well, which is it's ambiguous. Everything in
Yeah.
the book is ambiguous. So
Yeah.
at some points that can be a lot to take in.
Yeah.
At some points I felt fatigue from reading it. At other points I was like, man, this is just so incredibly well written and masterfully told. I'm making a case here that Carr is and I want you guys to critique my hot take. All right. I think Carr is the scariest villain to only appear in one Legends book.
Ooh.
He is a villain in a single novel. Does not appear in a trilogy, does not appear in a 9-book series. He's not in a film, he's not in a comic. For somebody to make one appearance and only one appearance, I think he is the best villain in all of Legends. Prove me wrong.
I don't think I'm going to prove you wrong. I feel like the second you said it, I could feel it. I can see him. I mean, every time he was on the page, you're right. It was just like, like he's clearly super powerful. I don't know how Mace is gonna deal with this thing. Like he can't beat him, and it's not like he's going to. He tried to play the big dog, little dog thing, and it was just. I don't know if there's anybody that's as intense as Carr, and he almost seems like I would love to see what it would be like to have Carr versus Darth Maul in a fight. Like I'd love to see how that
Oh man,
turns
yeah,
out.
that sounds cool. Yeah, for sure, I would like that. Yeah, okay, I can't stop grinning. That's awesome. You want to chime in on this one, Emma? You can take it to canon if you have to. Any character in a Star Wars book or comic that like has one appearance that could be a contender for a scarier single story villain?
Yeah, I mean, even even in canon, I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head right now that scared me as much as Carr did that only appears in one book or comic. So I don't think I'm going to argue against you. I think something that makes him really scary is his just the mystery surrounding why he's the villain, and also it's mysterious as to why he's so scary to me, which
Yeah.
kind of sounds weird, but I think it makes sense. Like we're supposed to fear him, but like why? Is it because he's been in the jungle for so long and he's kind of gone dark? Is it because he kind of is a bit manipulative to
Yeah,
other
for sure.
people for his sort of goals? And I think it's just that like shroud of mystery that honestly makes him scary. So no, right now I cannot prove you wrong. And
All right. I'll
yeah.
take the title. I'll wear the belt next episode. You won't see it because it's a Zoom call, but um, I do think, however, that there are a few other characters that could be contenders. I'm thinking about in canon. There's Lord Momin from the Vader comic. He's only in that one story that Charles Soules, but I don't think that's a scary character as much as
No,
an
I don't
interesting
either.
one. Kind of an interesting one. There's the Knights of the Old Republic. Hazen is a very scary villain for me. Freddy, you'll have to read all 1,400 pages of that bad boy to remember who Hazen is. I was trying to think. I had one more. Xanatos is in a couple of the Jedi Apprentice books. You got Qui-Gon's apprentice who turned to the dark side, who has it out
Uh,
for Obi-Wan. You remember him?
yeah.
Xanatos. But I find Xanatos to just be more like dark and broody.
Broody. Yeah.
Woe is me than he is scary.
Yeah. There's something just so animalistic of Carr, right? Like
That's
he
a good
just
word.
he's just so, and I'm not sure if this is the right word, but it honestly just feels like the right word. He's just so primal, and that's what's the scariest part of him. You just really can't predict what he's gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, he
Well-
was trying to bite Mace's carotid artery out of his body.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness gracious.
We didn't even mention that he's got these vibro shields that he spins, and they
Yeah. He's kind of like part Captain America, you know?
who is it? Oh, Freddie, you remember that the Power Rangers movie from like 1990, what, 6, 7, 8?
Yeah.
The one that's got
The putties.
the Tengu Warriors, like they go to that planet, and there's that woman who gives them their powers, and she spins that staff, and it makes that woo 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 noise that scares off the birds. This is super deep cut. Anyway, his shields reminded me of that.
Okay,
The
I
fact
see
that
where
he
you're
could
going.
spin these, and they would make this sound that could scare opponents. It made me think of Power Rangers, believe it or not.
That's awesome.
I'm always thinking about Power Rangers. No, this has been a lot of fun. Next week, we are going to get into the overarching questions. There's a lot more to talk about with Shatterpoint, of course, for a book that has some of the biggest metaphysical questions about life and reality and war. We got a lot more to talk about with this book. We're going to talk about what exactly is the Shatterpoint of the book, Shatterpoint. We're going to talk about how many times the word naked appears between pages 40 and 50. We're going to talk about how this ranks among our very favorite Legends books of all time. We're going to talk about the points that he's trying to make about colonialism and what exactly is the peaceful savage, and not to mention Mace's vision of Coruscant covered in jungle. What? We're going to get into all that next week. In the meantime, if you'd like some further reading, you want to check out more of what's happening over on utini.com, I would want to point you to our collections page where you could check out our military and warfare collection, which I'm not even sure if Shatterpoint is on there, but like maybe it is. And if it's not, there would be some other things. If you're wanting that deep, go all out into the war side of Star Wars, we've got a guide all about that. Also, we've got a Mace Windu collection for all of his best appearances as well. So tune in again next week, next Thursday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time if you're over there in sunny California with Freddy. But in the meantime, that does it for this week. Thanks for joining us on Legends Lookback. Thanks, of course, to our incredible patrons for their support. We love making the show and are glad that you are along for the ride. Special thank you to Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Sally and Chris Ireson, and your boy Freddie C on our Alliance High Command for their amazing support. One of these days, I'll take out the words "ya boy" there. That was a joke one time, and I've left it in. And you watch PTI, Freddie?
No, I do not.
That's what they always say. Is like, your boy. It's like, listen, I played golf with him one time. You know, yeah. Anyway, one of these days we'll play golf together, Freddie.
Sounds good, buddy.
Not that. Maybe just like, like go to a Star Wars bookstore.
I'm down.
But the joke is, does Freddie exist? Because I've never met him in real life.
I am Wat Tambor. I'm just a robot.
Perfect. If you would like your thoughts right on the show, you can email us at legendslookback@utini.com. You can send us a message in the Legends Lookback Discord channel. You can leave a comment on this episode on YouTube, or you can find us on Twitter at Legends Lookback, or personally, I'm at Jerry Q. Mace. Freddie.
At Wake Up Freddy.
Emma.
At Irma Jedi 26.
And Wat Tambor. No, he's not. Okay. If you're looking to buy some of these books, such as Shatterpoint, hey, you can get that 2003 copy. You can get the 2021 copy. You can go on over to utini.com, click the Amazon link in the profile, and you can pick up your own copy. While you're there, you can even leave us a review and let us know what you think. And as you do, remember, keep the Utini fan code and be a force for positivity in the fandom. Until next week, may the force be with you.